Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the book The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. And I didn't really like this one. Whereas the other one kind of had like, okay, we've got this kind of heist kind of set up. This one's whole central conceit is The Well of Ascension, and we really don't get to it till the end. Like, we're puttering along, doing these kind of things, exploring different kind of avenues. We're like, oh, the book's gonna end. This is called The Well of Ascension. We might as well kind of get to that, right? And this is very interesting because I have read more kind of stuff after Brandon Sanderson had done these books. And he has better sense of pacing and plotting in certain kind of things like The Wheel of Time. Granted, I understand that that's a little bit of a weirder kind of situation because of Robert Jordan and the Stormlight Archives. But this is just a weird one because it also happens in the next book as well, where we get a lot of repeating certain kind of information that we've kind of already just kind of covered or whatnot, or reiterating certain kind of points that I don't think need to be reiterated on. And also then kind of dropping certain kind of things like the Khandra and March just fucking disappearing and like, oh, okay, and then just being brought up when the plot needs the things to happen. Because it was really kind of weird also that we had the Khandra name dropped in the first one, and then we don't really get more of an explanation until this one, like, deeper into it. It's like, oh, okay, alright, what the fuck's kind of going on here? So, this is dealing with the fallout of the Lord Ruler. Elend has become king and has an assembly and everything, and that's the bulk of... that's a main tenet of the book, of him working with this assembly and all these laws and everything and trying to do best by his people. Good, that's fine. I like that kind of exploration. And Vin trying to explore her place in what's going on as well. We get more of her kind of training kind of stuff going on, mainly fighting another Mistborn that we learn is Zane, Elend's half-brother, who is working with his father, Strafe. And that we get this whole thing of, like, what happens after a revolution and trying to build everything kind of up. However, it's kind of simplified to a certain kind of degree where we've got Strafe coming from the Northern Dominance to take Luthadel, Set coming from the Western Dominance to take Luthadel, and one of Elend's friends has control of this Kolas army, and evidently that's something that was kind of created by the Lord Ruler as well as the Khandra, and that you can pretty much control them with emotional elemency. And it's just like, okay, like, he just pops up because we kind of need a third, crazier kind of option to deal with. So that way we've got, like, this whole thing. Elend was trying to pretty much... At first, his father was there, and it's like, ah, shit, we have to deal with this. And then Breeze brought in Set's army, because everybody's like, hey, where's the Atium at? Where's this money kind of stuff? And Luthadel, we kind of want this. And trying to pretty much set these armies against each other. It just really lacks tension to me. Like, I read this book, and I want to like the characters, and everything that's kind of going on, but it just doesn't grab me in its execution. I don't think it's done completely and utterly horrendously, but its execution does nothing for me, where I'm like, Vin, like, I understand Vin trying to figure out herself, and figure out her place in the world, and figure out how to be loved by Elend. That's a very compelling conflict to deal with. Same with Elend, with his love with Vin as well, and trying to be that kind of idealistic, noble, like, king ruler that he is attempting to do to try and find a better way. And then we pretty much just get explored that no, there is no better way. He gets taught by this other keeper, Tindwyl, who we have kind of more of a rushed love affair between her and Zazid, and her just pretty much dying just to kind of like break his faith and everything and create kind of more kind of conflict for him in the next kind of book, it's like, oh shit. And it's like the more interesting stuff of the Well of Ascension of Zazid in the beginning of the book, finding this this metal thing in the Steel Inquisitor's place, and finding out that this person wrote this thing in metal, and we learn that some entity is pretty much manipulating the world to be freed and is pretty much taking control of Marsh. Like, Marsh is acting kind of weird in the beginning, and then fuck all disappears for most of the book until the plot's like, hey, we kind of need him to stop Zazid from helping and stopping Vin from getting the Well of Ascension, which we get everything going on. Luthadell's about to fall, and the core group decide to send Vin and Alan on pretty much a wild goose chase of going for the Well of Ascension, where the Well of Ascension was in the place all along. It just felt really kind of weird that we're going through and doing all these things, and they just had to go back to the place, and it's just like, I almost felt that there had to have been a better way, because I'm like, oh god, we've been doing all this, she's been dealing with this thumping in her head, she's been dealing with these mist spirit things, which we still have no idea what's kind of going on about with that, which, by the way, I don't mind taking a longer kind of period to reveal and set things up. It's how it goes about it. With the Wheel of Time, I had issues with Robert Jordan with embroidery and focusing on details that didn't really matter. This has the problem of reiterating certain kind of things that we kind of already got a good kind of handle on. Like fucking in the next book, just as a kind of idea, I'm getting stuff explained to me that I already have had a detailed explanation, and it's kind of weird that we're still getting that explanation again from these kind of characters. Is like, I kind of know how this works. I've already read this. If we got any new information that kind of changes it, that's a different kind of matter. But that's not what's going on here. It's like, and it just eats up the page count, man. It just makes it kind of a chore to kind of go through. I mean, I'm able to get through at a decent kind of clip, but I'm like, alright, the amount of stuff that I can actually get through and talk about actually being meaningful kind of stuff, it's like, oh, okay, because it's somehow balancing between Ellen doing his stuff and then getting deposed and like dealing with that and trying to figure out what's going on, and then coming back in the city and being more of a king under Tinwill's leadership kind of crash course, where he just pretty much acts not like an asshole, but more like, you will obey me kind of shit. It's like, right? And the Kolos army pretty much going through wrecking shit like ain't nobody's business, and then Vin pretty much just going hambo-jambo on certain kind of shit, and like taking out Zane, taking out Strafe, telling Seth that he's gonna just fucking follow Ellen pretty much being crowned emperor. It's like, alright, before she goes and finds the Well of Ascension in Luthadel, and the Mist Spirit pretty much mortally wounds Ellen to pretty much force Vin to keep the power from the Well of Ascension to heal him, but she instead lets it go and frees an entity. It's like, what the fuck's going on here? And then she feeds a bead to Ellen that turns him into a Mistborn. It's like, oh, alright. I kind of rather would have just wanted him to die. And I don't say that lightly. It's just, we'll have to see how it kind of works out in the final book or whatnot. But I was almost just like, oh, I'm okay with a death if it makes sense or whatnot, or can add to the character, instead of just like making like a pain point where it's like, okay, we've been seeing this character deal with this for like 300 pages. And there's a difference between like dealing with it and having different kind of changes and different kind of moves with it, and just reiterating the same points of what's going on. That starts happening in the third book with Zazid. So this is about where Zazid, towards the end, having survived his bout with Marsh, comes to the realization that all this stuff that he's been reading, religions and everything, and all other kind of things within his recollections and writings of everything, has been manipulated by this entity, which should be more of a shocking kind of revelation of like, what the fuck? That when there's people that are brought up as this hero of ages, that it's this entity pretty much trying to put someone into a place to free it, and now it's free, and we'll have to see what the repercussions are, especially since it seems to be controlling the Inquisitors. So we will have to see how that kind of works out and shakes out. Let's see, any kind of... No. No, not really. Like, the political intrigue didn't really interest me much at all. Again, mainly to its execution, because there didn't seem to be much of a back and forth. Like, Ellen was pretty much put into a no-win position, and it was almost felt like the plot was just working its way to get to that kind of conclusion backwards. And I don't like saying that. In like Game of Thrones, or even in Stormlight, or in The Wheel of Time, you feel the kind of push and pull of what's kind of going on within the plot as the characters are mainly dancing through it. Characters kind of motivating and getting the plot going forward. Eddard Stark going down to King's Landing. Rand Althor trying to get Tarman Gaiden kind of going through and defeating the Dark One. Kaladin and the rest trying to figure out everything going on with all the machinations going on in Roshar. Here, it felt more that the plot was pushing the characters along rather than the characters participating in it. Now, granted, if that's some kind of way of detailing it more kind of along the lines of the entity kind of manipulating the world, I would be a little bit more okay with that. That still doesn't kind of excuse it, because I just felt like, okay, Ellen's doing these things, and I understand people are fighting, but when you get certain kind of heel turns that really don't even make sense with certain characters, like Merchant Ska Fillen, first going for Set, and then going for Penrod, and then just doing kind of whatever else. I don't mind him being kind of looking out for himself and trying to get his own titles, going for Strafe, going for Penrod, going for any kind of other kind of person. But it just felt, when you're looking at it through Ellen's perspective, it's more of a like, oh, the plot's demanding that you get screwed over right now, to a degree. This one's a really kind of hard one for me to kind of review and get into, because it's not that I don't like it, and there aren't things that I like find enjoyable out of it. Like Vin exploring how to be loved, and also doing some kind of crazy shit with her powers. Fight scenes were definitely serviceable enough, but they weren't enough to kind of like save me from the whole thing. It just is like not pulling me in that much, really. And it's, at least with the other one, I had the premise down, and like, okay, kind of a heist thing going on. This one doesn't even really have that. It's like, okay, how do we do with this? We're trying to deal with this whole kind of government thing. Now, if the Well of Ascension was this thing that was like a plotting kind of thing that was like, had dread and everything that they had to deal with at the end, I'd be more inclined to go with that. But this is more like, I don't know why it would... Granted, the Well of Ascension plays an important part at the end of it, but overall, it doesn't really affect the plot that much until it gets to the point where the plot needs it to be affected and affect the plot. It almost needed to be thought up as something kind of different. I do like it exploring and understanding the importance of religion and what can kind of like go on with it, but it doesn't really dive that much into it. It's just like, oh, this entity's manipulating all this stuff, and it breaks Sazid's pretty much faith and all that, and that's interesting. Now, granted, that happens at the end, so we have to see what kind of explorations that goes on with in other ones, but I think I'm more into the Stormlight series. I will finish this third one, but even though the Cosmere kind of connects everything, I don't know if I would go into any kind of other ones. And I don't know, there's just something that grabs me more with the Stormlight archives. Maybe the magic system, maybe the characters, everything working together, the world building, the plot, and everything just grabs me more. Whereas this, it's just done in a different kind of style with different kind of characters that I want to like, but it doesn't give me enough to really latch onto them completely. Yeah. That's pretty much the hardest kind of thing for me. It just doesn't grab me as other works have done, like the Red Rising series, or anything like other kind of book series. I am looking into other kind of ones as well, but I was, since I was into the Stormlight archives, I wanted to see other kind of Cosmere books and what kind of important things might be kind of working around to everything going on. I don't know what Brandon Sanderson is doing for the whole kind of thing. He's going to build all the rest into like a main kind of series that has things that go on from one book series to the next. That's just kind of the things that happen with certain kind of connected worlds. Pretty much with like the MCU and other kind of things. I can understand people not looking into all the different kind of shows and whatnot because you're like, this doesn't interest me. But it should be value add, not required in certain kind of instances. And I hope that this is more just like, oh, you see this, that, and the other. And this character making a cameo or that kind of thing. So we'll see how that kind of works out. I don't know. Now granted, this is earlier works of Brandon Sanderson, so I totally get that. His style changes, your writing changes. After certain kind of books, you could have different objectives with different kind of series, like with Stormlight versus this one. We'll just have to see how that kind of goes on. This doesn't turn me off of him as a writer completely. But it's hard for me to recommend this series. Because mainly it's down to execution on things more than anything. And the thing is, it's not completely horrible. It's not like we go completely anime trope and just, oh god, tsundere, boom, and just weird ass shit or whatnot. It just, how certain kind of information is delivered, how certain kind of setups go on, how certain kind of pacing works on, how certain kind of things just drop off. And especially like the pacing of Marsh just disappearing and popping up. The Well of Ascension just kind of being this thing in the background, and then it's like, oh, we gotta deal with this. The whole Condra thing where somebody has been replaced, and then it's like, oh, it was the Condra all along. It's like, alright, I actually didn't care for that reveal. Not because I don't think it shouldn't have happened. It's just, again, I'm just like, oh, okay. It's like, here's this thing, and I'm like, I don't care. Okay, cool. Can we get this done? Because I'd lost interest in the Condra plot because you would think that with a traitor or whatnot, or somebody as being a shapeshifter, you'd kind of want to deal with that pretty damn quickly or whatnot. And they're just tooling around. It's like, okay, she has to look into each member. I'm like, that's fine. But when it's doing this, and then we go to something else, and then we come back to this and go to something else, and then it's like, I'm trying to understand the time framing here, but it's almost like a couple months, and you're probably fucked at that point. It's like, alright. Now, I'm not saying that you need to completely and utterly bum rush the goddamn thing, but you would think you'd try and, like, do some kind of thing. I mean, balancing most of the kind of stuff out. I mean, Alan should have just been dealing with all the stuff that he had to deal with getting deposed and everything, and Ben should have just cracked out some kind of thing and had a main focus and figured that shit out. But it almost needed that the plot demanded that she needed this dramatic reveal of Zane and Orseer. Her contract Khandra from Kelsier is actually Tensun, and learning everything about the Khandra and all that. Yeah, the Khandra and the Koloss were created by the Lord Ruler and can be controlled by the whole soothing allomancy. I talked about that as well, but that was like a big thing because the Khandra don't want to be slaves, and their whole kind of contract of serving a human and not hurting humans and all that are interesting, but nothing really much interesting is done with Orseer / Tensun. It's just like, alright. What is this? Again, what does this add to the value of the plot for me? Now, granted, this is a trilogy. It could pop up more in the next one, which that'll be an interesting one to go through as well, because we're already jumping around. It's like, what the fuck? This one, at least, was interesting of having the three main characters of, well, not three main characters, but the 3-point characters that we do of Vin, Elend, and Sazid. So we'll see how that kind of works out later on with other kind of things. But I'd almost just recommend, if the first one sounded good to you, to just stop there. But if you're still interested in the world and the characters, that I think you'd still be interested in this one. This is a good one for me to review because this should be up my alley. I should be ranting and raving and saying that this is great and everything, but it's just down to stylistic choices that really don't work for me. But I don't say that it's bad. It just doesn't work for me. So, those are my opinions on the book. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.